Good afternoon. This is Randy Welsh, the Executive Director for the National Wilderness Stewardship Alliance, and this is a recap of our February webinar about the National Wilderness Stewardship Alliance's funding programs. Our original webinar had a snafu. Somebody forgot to hit the record button. So we're going to repeat the broadcast for those that weren't able to see it. So with that in mind, we're going to move to the presentation. And let's see. Okay, I would like to say that this presentation was originally broadcast on February 9th, but we're repeating it so that we can have it in our files, and people who were interested in our current funding programs could have it as a reference. So again, I'm Randy Welsh, the Executive Director. I manage the funding programs, and today we're going to talk about what National Wilderness Stewardship Alliance has in the way of money available for wilderness and trail stewardship. So before I do, I just want to give a brief plug for the virtual Hike the Hill that's happening this week and over the next couple of weeks. If you haven't signed up, you might consider doing that. But today I really want to focus on our three funding programs. Our Wilderness Stewardship Performance Partner Funding, which is our hallmark funding for wilderness stewardship. Another program that we have is our National Forest Trail System Stewardship Partner Funding, which is a partnership with many of the other national trails groups. And then our Boots on the Ground grants, which we have from time to time as money becomes available from funders and donors. So let's take them one at a time. Our first and our hallmark program is our Wilderness Stewardship Performance Funding. And Wilderness Stewardship Performance is the Forest Service's suite of activities that they monitor and manage for determining whether a wilderness area is being managed to a minimum stewardship level. And it's accomplished by performing 10 of the 20 wilderness stewardship performance elements. These things include such items as invasive species, eradication, solitude monitoring, workforce, wilderness education. There's a whole host of wilderness stewardship performance elements, and within each element there's a suite of activities that the agency gets scoring for, and it's important that you understand this so that you can determine how your group can help accomplish some of these workload items, these tasks that will help improve the individual scores for a particular wilderness area. Because that's a requirement of this funding, is that the work that you're proposing will help contribute to the score that an individual wilderness area will receive for accomplishing their wilderness stewardship performance elements. Now, each wilderness area chooses 10 of the elements out of a total list of 20. And there are 4 or 5 that are mandatory for all wildernesses, but then that gives each wilderness area an option for a variety of others to fit work that is particular importance to their area. So this requires interaction with the local wilderness manager, understanding which elements have been chosen for that particular area, and then matching up your proposal to those elements. Now, we have had in the past both summer and winter programs. We've expanded it now to just be a calendar year program, typically award program dollars in May. Groups can then work from May through December, try to get the reporting completed by the end of the calendar year. Over the last 5 years, I'm pleased to say that we've distributed almost over $1 million in project work. We've probably had somewhere over 80 or 90 projects that we funded. And in 2021, we anticipate having $220,000 to distribute for project work. And these projects are important to the Forest Service. Not only do they get wilderness stewardship work done, but they typically return on investment of 3 to 1 or more because of the cash and in-kind matching requirements that are involved in the program. For all the details about this program, you just go to wildernessalliance.org under our funding programs, where you can find the fact sheet, application form, budget form. We have a streamlined application process. Try to make it easy for you. There's a form to fill out with some critical contact information and metrics information about each project. Then a narrative, fairly simple, describing your organization, what you're proposed to do, some of the time frames and coordination that you've had, and then a budget form where you detail out what your actual expenditures and your reimbursement requests will be. These are reimbursable accounts that work the challenge cost share with the Forest Service, and so that's why we need the budget detail. And as you do work, you'll put in a request for funding for reimbursing expenses that you've already had. We'll look that over and then request the money from the Forest Service, and then turn around and pay you back for the work that you've done. Now, how do we rate these projects? And I would say that projects come in all shapes and sizes, and there's no one standard project that works. What I think helps is that first we screen the projects for qualifying work. It's really a no-starter if it's not one of the 10 wilderness stewardship performance elements that's going to be accomplished. And it has to be in a national forest wilderness, of course. We also check to make sure that there's a cash and/or in-kind match of at least 1 to 1. Most successful projects generally have higher amounts. Like I say, the average is typically around 3 to 1, both with a cash and an in-kind combination. We look at your organization capability. What's your track record? Have you had these projects in the past? Have you worked with us in the past, so we have a better understanding of what you're able to do? Then we look at the project itself. Our team of board members come from all around the country, have vast experience working on these kind of projects. They look them over, ensure that what you're proposing is feasible based on their knowledge and background. And we'll talk about it if we have any questions. We'll call you if we have any questions. And then we look at the level of accomplishments that's going to be occurring. How is it going to improve the WSP score from one year to the next? And even if there's not an improvement, if we can show an absolute maintenance of a score that would have declined otherwise, that can still qualify. And because we are trying to increase the number of volunteers that are working on the National Forest, we do look at the number of people involved. We do kind of balance between projects that are just funding a crew versus projects that are bringing out volunteers for work days. And then there's always a final balancing of the total number of projects by region of the Forest Service, so that we are distributing funding not evenly, but equitably across the National Forest System. The application period is generally February 1st to March 26th. We've already extended the deadlines to April 9th. So the final date for submissions of proposals this year is going to be April 9th. We'll then turn around and make decisions by the 1st of May, and then you'll be free to, if selected, to do work from May 1st through December 31st. We then ask that you have your final invoices and your final projects due by January 15th, so we can finish up the program for that particular year and then start over for next year. And again, the applications are going to be due April 9th, not the 26th. So our next funding program is our National Forest System Trail Stewardship Partner Funding. And this is a program that we developed with the Forest Service to help support the goals of the National Forest Trail Stewardship Act that was passed several years ago. The focus on that act was to increase the trail maintenance accomplishment that would happen on national forest trails and increase the number of volunteers that would be working on the national forest trails, both to bring trails up to standard and to reduce the backlog reduction on the national forest system. To qualify, the work must be on a national forest system trail. It has to be a designated trail, and it needs to be logged into InfraTrails and be part of the managed system. It can include both motorized and non-motorized, wilderness or non-wilderness trails. But we are asking that they be terra trails so that there's an actual footprint on the ground, not cross-country ski trails during the winter time or water trails of any sort. And this program is managed through a partnership that we have developed with American Trails, the American Hiking Society, the Backcountry Horsemen of America, the International Mountain Bicyclist Association, the Blue Ribbon Coalition, and the American Motorcycle Association. We're also trying to involve NOVAC, the National Outdoor Off-Road Highway Vehicle Conservation Council, in reviewing project proposals and making project selections so that we've got selection of national experts from the different trail groups that are involved with national forest management, and have them engaged and involved in determining how the split of the project should be across the country. Just a little details. We didn't have funding in 2019, but in the last 2 years that we did, in 2018, 2020, we awarded over $700,000 across those 2 years. Last year, we had over $300,000 that we awarded out with 30. Sorry about that. With 39 proposals funded, contributing almost a 5-to-1 return with the cash match and the in-kind contributions. Similarly, in 2018, we had $424,000 that we awarded out, funded 42 proposals, and we had a over 7-to-1 return due to some fairly large cash matches and in-kind contributions that we saw that year. These really make a difference to the Forest Service. They really appreciate the extra money that's coming in to help manage the National Forest System trails. And it's part of the rationale they use for continuing these programs. So kudos to you who have requested these projects and have been able to contribute to them in such a meaningful way. Some of the details, again, this year, we're waiting on our final numbers for this year. We do anticipate it will be somewhere in that $200,000 to $300,000 range, though we've been advised it could be as high as $500,000. You can find a fact sheet, an application form, and a budget form on our website. Again, a streamlined application, budget form, and narrative. And again, we want you to focus on the metrics of trail maintenance miles and backlog reduction accomplishments. This particular funding program really does focus on trying to maximize the amount of trail miles that are maintained and kept to standard, and the number of volunteers that are used on the National Forest Trail System. So it tends to favor projects that have a large number of trail miles maintained, 20, 30, even as many as 50 or 60 miles of trail over the course of the season. through a variety of work crews, volunteer weekend work, and paid crews and some contracting, versus spending all summer long on a 3/4 of a mile stretch of trail that might need a lot of heavy rock work. That's probably not the kind of project that will get funded with this particular funding. That's probably one more to request through the RTP funding with each of the states, or to work directly with the Forest Service on a special agreement for that kind of heavy intensive type work. We're really trying to focus more on trying to get as many miles maintained and as many people involved as possible. And we're working at February through March for our announcement and solicitations. Deadline is April 9th again, April 9th, and then we'll award around the 1st of May, and people can start working. Again, check out for the latest announcements at wildernessalliance.org on our funding website or on our splash page, and you'll see the latest information. Similar type of rating system. We screen it for work that's being done on the National Forest Trail System. The cash and in-kind matches at least are 1-to-1. As you've seen, we typically are getting 3 to 5 to 1. Organization capacity, capability, project feasibility. Again, that level of accomplishment of trail maintenance and people involved, and then a final balancing by region and area and type of trail, so that we're not just funding all wilderness trails as much as we'd like to, but that we're also doing motorized trails and other trails around the country in an even, equitable way. Our last program is our Boots on the Ground program, which is focused on wilderness stewards and helping them to accomplish a lot of this work that they normally do out in the woods. And our Boots on the Ground is just that. It's a special fund that we have for small dollar amounts to help provide for supplies and equipment, materials to get people out on the ground. There's usually not a lot of money involved in these grants. They're typically $2,000 to $3,000, even as much as $5,000. So that doesn't really help to pay salaries, but it can help to cover costs of transportation, food reimbursement, and the materials and equipment to get work done in wilderness. And again, these funds are dependent upon us having a donor or having an agreement in place. So you'll just have to check back each year to see if we're able to do that or not. And again, they are totally, the mix of activities are pretty wide open as long as it's in wilderness and it's focused on field type work. That's the type of projects that would get funded with this particular program. So those are the 3 programs, and let me just kind of close with a few tidbits to help you plan and prepare your particular proposal for any of the 3 programs. First and foremost, follow the instructions. We have set this up a particular way for managing the paperwork associated with each of the proposals. So please don't modify the forms or the formats, just fill them in and ship them to us. Make sure that your work qualifies. So that's so important. It has to be a WSP scoring project proposal for the WSP program. It has to be on a National Forest System trail for the Trail Stewardship Partner Funding. And can't stress those 2 enough, because we've had to throw out a number of projects that just didn't qualify when it was pretty black and white as to what was required. Even though they were good projects, they just didn't cut it. Each of our projects, each of our programs require that you have coordinated with the Forest Service and have their approval for the projects. We do that through a letter of support that's required by each of the the district rangers or forest supervisors that might be in charge or managing the particular program or project where you're at. So that coordination just is to ensure that there's no surprises on the part of the agency, that they're in full coordination and commitment with you to get this work done. And that letter of support should just essentially say that, so that we're aware then that you've made the steps to talk to your district ranger and have coordinated with him on fitting into the program of work, and that the NEPA is all done for the particular project, and you're free to go forward and complete it. In the terms of the cash and in-kind contributions, of course, some cash always increases your competitiveness. It's a dual rating for both cash and in-kind, so the more of each that you have, the more points you score, and the more competitive you become. And that's just a fact of life, that the financial aspect of this is important to the agency, and we've found that good projects typically have a fairly significant cash and in-kind contribution to them, and so it does seem to work out well. But even if you don't have that, still, if your project is good, it can still compete in the other areas. But it is important that you have brought something to the table from outside the government to add to the stature of the project. Goes without saying that the work for these projects has to happen within the period of May through December. We are continuing trying to ask the agency if we could extend these to 2 years to kind of pick up that wintertime work and to make adjustments for work that gets delayed or canceled due to fire or other issues like COVID this last year. Until we're able to do that, we just have to work within our calendar year model. And always remember that for the trails program, it's the miles of trail that are probably the most critical element, and for WSP, it's those scores that matter. Those are the things that really drive the program home. I did mention a few other places of funding that if you've got some advocacy focused grants for your conservation area, Conservation Alliance does have small amounts of grants for advocacy related work. Your REI stores usually have a local stewardship granting program, also a source of in-kind contributions. You can check your local outdoor corporations if you're fortunate to have a sporting goods manufacturer or retailer in your area. They often are willing to fund local organizations. There's local foundations that you can check into that may have an interest in your particular place and might be willing to consider a grant for project work. Again, don't forget other government funding that exists in a variety of forms, anywhere from state RTP funds, lottery money, even travel and tourism funding. Oftentimes, Chamber of Commerce might have a pot of money to improve the tourism opportunities within an area. And don't forget your place-based relationships with the people that are place-based and other organizations that may not be the norm for outdoor recreation, but that they care about your local community. And that might also be an opportunity to seek some funding, especially for capacity building of your organization. And then we're going to have a webinar in June on local fundraising efforts, where we're going to focus in on some of the things that small groups can do to raise money, like holding silent auctions, the use of the film festivals to raise funds, and other sort of local fundraising efforts that groups rely on for their funding. Just to note, this is a little bit out of date, but Our webinars are the second Tuesdays of each month at noon Pacific time, 1 Mountain time. We just completed the National Forest System Trail Stewardship Challenge. So that PowerPoint is available, and the guidebook for the Trail Stewardship Challenge is available on our website. And on April 13th, we will be having a webinar with Friends of Nevada Wilderness, the Oregon Natural Desert Association, and the Pacific Crest Trail, all having panelists talking about their COVID response strategies for the summer of 2021. That should be very interesting to see how these groups have managed to navigate through the COVID pandemic this last year and have put forward good plans for the upcoming year. Again, you can check out all of our future webinars at wildernessalliance.org/webinars or on our splash page. So if you have any questions, please check out our funding programs page or give me a call or send me an email at randy@wildernessalliance.org. So thanks again. I hope that this will help you as you plan for your potential proposals in our funding programs this year. We really look forward to getting those. Again, have them to us by April 9th. And we'll be reviewing them shortly thereafter and getting back to you by the 1st of May. So thanks so much for participating, listening to this webinar. We'll look forward to the next time. Bye now.